It all started with a call I somehow knew would change my life. I was in a small town in rural Kansas, working on a project that needed my full attention, when my phone rang. It was my wife, and her voice had a tone of urgency that chilled me to the bone.
Our son is sick. I'm taking him to the hospital,
She said, her voice trembling. Without a second thought, I dropped everything and decided to drive home. It was a long drive, over 4 hours. If I left immediately, I'd reach Wichita around 4 a.m. But how could I wait, knowing my son was in the hospital? The only thing that mattered was getting to him. Driving through the night on a deserted stretch of highway, I felt the darkness growing thicker with each passing mile. The headlights seemed to lose their battle against the blackness. The road was completely empty, without a single car in sight. I muttered to myself, trying to shake off the fear. Don't think about it. I just need to get to Wichita before it's too late. But the darkness seemed to swallow the road, and my only companions were the hum of the engine and my anxious thoughts about my son. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a faint light ahead. It wasn't a car's headlight or a street lamp. As I got closer, I saw a young woman standing by the side of the road, waving frantically for help. She looked out of place, an eerie sight that sent a chill down my spine. God, I'm the one who needs help, I muttered as I drove past her. But the desperate look on her face filled me with guilt. I couldn't just drive on. I pulled over, took a deep breath, and backed up to where she was standing. Miss, what are you doing out here in the middle of nowhere? I asked.
My car broke down, and I haven't seen anyone for hours.
She replied, her voice quivering. Where are you headed? I asked.
Kansas City.
She answered, sounding relieved. Hop in. I'm heading that way, I replied. She was young, pretty, dressed like she'd come from a party. Despite that, she didn't seem drunk. I was exhausted, my mind occupied with thoughts of my son. I avoided looking at her, not wanting to seem impolite, and kept the conversation to a minimum. All I wanted was silence to sort out my thoughts. She broke the silence.
Your car is nice.
I gave a quick smile and said, Thanks. The highway continued to be dark, illuminated only by my headlights. Suddenly, I noticed she was staring at me, studying every detail of my face. A wave of discomfort started to build up. Why are you looking at me like that? I asked, trying to hide my irritation. Hide my...
You're handsome, I'm just admiring you.
She said with a disturbing smile. Look, I don't mean to be rude, but I don't like to talk while I'm driving. Besides, I'm married, so let's keep it quiet until we get to Kansas City, I replied, hoping to end any further interaction. She let out a laugh that sounded hollow and unsettling. Then, suddenly, the car stopped abruptly, as if an invisible force had turned it off. I felt both anger and fear surge inside me. Damn it, what now? I muttered. I got out, popped the hood, and took a look. Nothing seemed obviously wrong, but the car wouldn't start. The darkness around me felt suffocating. The wind whispered through the nearby fields, and the silence was overpowering. I turned back, and the woman was gone. I looked around, but there was no sign of her. I thought she might be messing with me, trying to scare me. Hey, miss, I shouted, but there was no response. My heart began to pound. Was she hiding in the brush by the road? Was she crazy? Already shaking with fear, I decided that if I couldn't fix the car, I'd have to walk and find help. I was still trying to figure out why the car wouldn't start when I heard laughter, distant but clear, from across the road. I shone my phone's flashlight in that direction and saw her. The woman was standing there holding something shiny in her hand.
The car won't start without this,
she said with a sinister grin, holding up the car key before sprinting into the fields, laughing like a maniac. Furious and desperate, I yelled, "You crazy woman, come back here!" as I started to run after her. I chased her through the dense brush for what felt like 10 minutes. My heart was pounding so fast it felt like it would burst. The darkness was absolute and I could barely see my path. I stumbled several times, but I kept running, driven by anger and fear. Finally, she stopped in front of an old, gnarled oak tree. "Hand over that key, you lunatic," I shouted. When she turned around, pure terror gripped me. She was different now. Her eyes, which had seemed normal before, were now completely black, with no whites. Her skin was as pale as a corpse, with blood seeping from various wounds. But the most horrifying thing was that she wasn't walking. She was floating. I was frozen with fear. My body shook uncontrollably as she floated closer. Her black eyes seemed to pierce through me, and every cell in my body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. She placed a cold hand on my head, and suddenly vivid visions flooded my mind. These weren't memories. They were more like fragments of a nightmare. I saw her at a party, dancing and laughing, but soon 4 men started watching her with dark intentions. I watched as they followed her to her car, drunk and filled with malice. She tried to fight, but they grabbed her and dragged her away. The terror on her face was chilling. They raped her brutally, mercilessly. Then, as if that wasn't enough, they stabbed her multiple times until she stopped moving. I saw them carrying her body to this very tree and burying her there. She took her hand off my head, still floating, and looked deep into my eyes.
That's what happened to me.
She said, her voice sounding like it came from the depths of hell.
Those bastards killed me and buried me here. Since that day, I've been stuck in this place. I need your help.
I was in shock, still trembling. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, my voice shaky.
You will dig me up. One of those monsters lost a card here, evidence that they buried me. Take my phone and the card with you. I'll handle the rest,
she commanded. I asked, still in disbelief, "And the body? Should I call the police?" She laughed coldly.
The police won't do anything. They might arrest them, but they'll be out in no time. You will call the police, yes, but not now. You'll know when the time is right.
And then, just like that, she vanished. I found a shovel lying next to the tree. She must have left it there for me. Though fear gripped my heart, I began to dig. Every thrust into the ground made my heart race faster. Finally, I uncovered a skeleton wrapped in torn clothes. My breathing was rapid, but I kept going. Among the bones, I found a cell phone, and after a few more minutes, a business card. It read, "Michael Foster, attorney." I returned to the car, my heart still pounding. To my shock, she was sitting in the passenger seat, waiting for me.
You can thank me later,
she said, touching my forehead softly. The next thing I knew, I blacked out. I woke up with a bright light shining in my face. I blinked several times, trying to figure out where I was. The light was coming from a flashlight, and as I focused, I realized it was a security guard. He was looking at me with a puzzled expression.
"Sir, you can't sleep here,"
he said in a firm but gentle tone. Still groggy, with my heart racing, I tried to reply, "Sorry, my car broke down," and my voice trailed off as I looked around. I was parked in a familiar street, right outside a hospital in Kansas City. My heart leaped. How had I gotten here? The guard continued.
"And you can't park here in front of the hospital."
My mind was swirling with confusion. I looked at him and asked, "What time is it?" He replied without hesitation.
1 a.m.
My whole body went cold. I had left the town in Kansas around midnight. It was impossible to have made it to the hospital so quickly. It should have taken at least 4 hours. My mind flooded with questions. She helped me, I thought, a chill running down my spine. I thanked the security guard and rushed inside the hospital. When my wife saw me, she looked both shocked and relieved.
How did you get here so fast?
She asked, a mixture of anxiety and disbelief in her eyes. "I'll explain later. How's Ethan?" I replied, deflecting the question. She smiled and said,
He's doing better now.
The following day, still haunted by the events of the previous night, I scheduled an appointment with the attorney whose name was on the business card, Michael Foster. As I entered his office, a jolt of recognition hit me. The man in front of me was the same face I had seen in the visions. His expression was one of wary curiosity.
How can I assist you? Please tell me everything.
He said in a calm, professional manner. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled the card from my pocket and laid it on his desk. "You dropped this," I said icily, placing the woman's phone beside it. He stared at me, a mix of surprise and unease in his eyes, trying to make sense of what was happening. Before he could say another word, I turned and walked out. As I exited, I heard a muffled scream from inside the office, a scream filled with sheer terror. A smile crept across my face. He now understood what was coming for him. A week later, while watching the evening news, a headline grabbed my attention. 4 bodies found brutally mutilated. The screen showed images of faces that were disturbingly familiar, the same men I had seen in the visions. They had been tortured, their limbs severed, left to die in agony. Her vengeance had been fulfilled. I remembered her words, "You will know when to call the police." It all made sense now. She had exacted her revenge, waiting for the perfect moment to carry out her justice. I picked up my phone, dialed a number from a burner phone, and reported anonymously, "There's a body buried under a large oak tree off County Road 38. I didn't wait for questions, I just hung up. As I did, a cold breeze brushed against me, as if she were there, whispering a silent thank you. Finally, she could rest in peace. She had been avenged. And although I knew I had played a part in this dark circle of retribution, I felt a strange relief that the nightmare was over. Yet every night when I close my eyes, I can't shake the memory of her hollow stare and those black, endless eyes watching me, as if, even now in her peace, she still lingers, waiting for just one more favor